Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I will be wrapping up the fall season for the 2024-25 season. I feel like the skating season is sort of basically in like four chunks, four parts. Part one, the Challenger season. Part two, the Grand Prix season. Part three is the national season, which we are into right now. And then part four is the ISU championships. Four continents, Europeans, and of course, worlds. So it's always good to sort of have this sort of midway check-in. Who's been the big winners? Who's kind of been the losers? Who's the wild card? Who's on the up and up? And just sort of break it down with each and every discipline. I'm going to start off with pairs, which back when I did the Grand Prix assignments episode back in the summer, pairs and the women's were the two disciplines that I was most excited for just based upon the initial matchups. Now, obviously, some of those changed because we had a lot of withdrawals this season. Strangely enough, not as much as we had last season, but still a lot of withdrawals. And pairs was no different, but we definitely had some pair teams emerge as some of the really, I think, strong at the top is the way that I would classify this fall for pairs, is that those top 6 to 8 teams all really bringing it every single competition. And then the sort of middle of the pack, I felt like was rather thin this season. And then we had kind of the bottom. But overall, pairs has really improved each and every year of this Olympic quad. If we go back to 2 seasons ago, it really left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. They were very, very frustrated. Whereas if you look at it now, it is much improved, vastly different. We've got a lot of really high quality pairs. My winners for this fall are Hasi and Volodin of Germany. They were also my winners of last fall as well. Last fall, they won everything that they entered in. Challengers, Grand Prix, Grand Prix final. This season, they almost did the same thing. They won Nebelhorn, won their first Grand Prix, had a fluke fall in the short program of their second Grand Prix, which is in Finland, ended up losing that by a slim margin, but then went on to win Grand Prix final. So they have been just really, really strong this season, got the best short program scores of their career at Grand Prix final. The free skate has really been a good vehicle for them all season. And of the top 3 teams, those teams that medaled at Worlds last season, them, Deanna and Max, and then also Miura Kihara of Japan, they have been by far and away the most consistent team that we have seen so far this season. And for me, they're not only the winners of the first half of the season, they are the favorites going into ISU championship season, going into Europeans, going into Worlds. Now, they were the favorites going to Europeans last season, and things just kind of did not go as they would have wanted to go then. I would imagine this year it's going to go a lot better for them, and I definitely expect them to win. I don't have any other winners for this fall season, but I do have most improved, and I've got 2 teams. First is Sarah Conti and Nicola Masci of Italy. And here's a team that just kind of shot out of the cannon the 22-23 season, won Europeans, won a bronze at Worlds, came in last season with big expectations that they did not live up to whatsoever. At this time last season, it looked like they were getting their season back on track, getting a silver medal at Grand Prix final, and then did not have a good Europeans, did not have a good Worlds, and so they came in as a really big question mark for me coming into this season, and they've really exceeded my expectations. They just continue to get better with every single competition that they've entered this season, and while they didn't medal at Grand Prix final, they were very close. They won their first Grand Prix this season over Hasi and Volodin at Finland, and they just look really strong. Their partnership looks really strong, whereas there were times last season it was very apparent that they didn't seem like they were getting along very well. She would oftentimes be trying to console him. He was having none of it. So they seem to be much in a better place this season, and it's been really nice to see. The other most improved team for me has been Anastasia Vaughn-Law and Luke Digby of Great Britain. This is a team that entered in so many different events in the 22-23 season, just trying to qualify for Worlds, and a team that would consistently have a really hard time getting 100 points in their free skate. And they have just completely transformed and blossomed this season to the point that their score that they got at Skate America, while it was 6 at Skate America, would have been enough to get them on the podium at Grand Prix France, for instance. That's how strong that it was, and it was a very stacked field there. They were second at Warsaw Cup behind Meltikina and Burlava for the second year in a row, but their score this season was almost 20 points higher than it was at last season. So they've just come such a long way, and it's been really, really beautiful to see. If I were to give like a Rookie of the Year or Newcomer of the Year award, that would go to Alicia Efimova and Misha Mitrofanoff of the U.S. They came out really strong at Skate America, getting onto the podium there, and were just a fluke botch lift away in their second Grand Prix from getting on the podium there as well. Really fantastic programs that they have. Really just feels like a unique partnership that has just gelled really quickly for this team as well. I've been really impressed with them so far. We got to have winners, then we also got to have losers, unfortunately, and I've got a few. So my first ones are Pavlova and Shevchenko of Hungary. They were so close to medaling at all of the big events last season. They came out, got medals in both of their Grand Prix, just narrowly missed out on the Grand Prix final initially, but were able to go once Håkan Kunkel had to withdraw. They were fourth there, went on to be fourth at Europeans, went on to be fourth at Worlds with the best scores of their career. So I really felt like they were going to come into this season vying for some titles, and that did not happen at all. First, they came out with this awful short program that I have just given the blues on the podcast all season. That did not help them. They have not said that they've been injured, but Maria especially just has not been at the top of her game really all season, and they just really underwhelmed and underperformed, especially from what we are used to seeing from them with their consistency. And then we really just haven't seen a lot of growth with their program components with either program this season either. So they're one of my losers. I'm also going to pick on Leah Pereira and Trent Michaud of Canada, and another team that was in the Grand Prix final last season, won their first Grand Prix last year. And since Grand Prix final last year, I just feel like they have just come undone. They did not have a good second half to last season. So coming into this season, I was expecting to see some improvement. And really, it was just, especially at the beginning of the season, a lot of the same. Couldn't land throws, very inconsistent with the side-by-sides, didn't make it onto the podium at their challenger, didn't make it on the podium at their first Grand Prix, did find a way onto the podium at Finland, but it wasn't in particularly exciting fashion. They did well in the short program, but the free skate was still very messy. So I'm still waiting for this team to show me what I was so excited about 2 seasons ago. So unfortunately, they're one of my losers. And I'm also going to pick on Shannon Howe of the U.S. They are one of my losers also. Another team that 2 years ago was doing all the right things. Now, granted, they definitely took advantage of what was a very dilapidated field in pairs. They made Grand Prix final, medaled at 4 continents, 5th at Worlds, and with Alexa and Brandon moving on, looked to be the team that was going to inherit team number 1 of the U.S., and they have just not been there at all. They come into this season healthy after a shortened season last year with Spencer's surgery, and they just continue to have a lot of issues. Side-by-side jumps, throws aren't consistent, the lifts are starting to look a little bit better. They were very shaky at the beginning of the season. There's just zero connection between the two of them. It's just not working right now. And they've been passed by Efimova and Mitrofanoff. At home, you've got another team on the rise in Balazs and Audrey Shin, who have recently paired up. They just competed at Golden Spin. It's not looking good for Shannon Howe. And right now, I'm not really seeing the vision of the upward trajectory of them getting a whole lot better either. I do have some wild cards, and these are teams that we either haven't seen a lot from or they're kind of a question mark. So the first one, Bakari and Garizi. Reigning European champions and what was definitely a surprise last season. We have only seen them at Shanghai Trophy so far this season. Lucrezia broke her foot at the end of last season and was out all summer. and then aggravated it or had an injury to the other foot. It's not been clear to me, but 2 foot injuries have sidelined them for the entirety of the Grand Prix. It's not clear whether or not they're going to be able to return for the second half of the season or not. So that's why they're a big wild card, because Gilardi and Ambrosini haven't really been able to shut that door and firmly put themselves in that second spot. And so if Bakari and Garizi were able to come back, land side-by-side jumps, then I think that could potentially put them into the spot at Worlds instead of Gilardi and Ambrosini, but we don't really know exactly what the status is of Lucretia's injury. My other wild cards are Cam and O'Shea and Meltikina and Buralava for different reasons. Cam and O'Shea because their whole issue for the entirety of their short career has been the inability to land throws. And at times this season, they have been able to land the throws, but then something else has gone wrong. A side-by-side jump, what have you. They had a fluke fall in one of their events in the free skate on like a dance lift transition. So it's just never been able to sort of be able to put together. But we have seen the judges really reward them for the complexity in their programs, for their transitions. If they ever could get all of those things together at one time, they could be a real contender. With Meltikina and Buralava, what has really held them back, obviously, is their program components. But a lot of times it's really been the short program, just haven't been able to get really high enough scores in that to sort of be able to compete with the top teams when they're at their best. But we saw them at Grand Prix Final get 72 in the short program, which is a great score for them. We know they can go over 140 in their free skate. For me, they pose the biggest risk to those top 3 medalists from last year's Worlds to potentially spoil those top 3 at this year's Worlds. And I think they could even spoil Haase and Volodin winning Europeans if Haase and Volodin were to make a mistake and Anastasia and Luka were not. You could also throw a little bit of a wild card with Ganesh and Chigarev of Uzbekistan, which is a Russian team that is now representing Uzbekistan so that they're able to compete since Russia is not able to. They came out at Skate Canada, and while neither of their programs are going to knock anybody's socks off, they do have some difficult elements that they do well when they can land them. It's difficult to say because we don't have a lot of history with this team. Skate Canada, they actually won the free skate. Then they went back to back, and at that next Grand Prix, they had a really rough free skate. So was that because they were going back to back and they just weren't really prepared for that? Who knows exactly? So for me, they're definitely a wild card because we just don't really know what their consistency level is like in competition. They don't have a lot of international experience. All right, so if I'm going to just kind of close out each discipline with some of the standout programs for me so far in pairs, Cam and O'Shea's short program for me is a real standout. I love both of Miura and Kihara's programs, their Paint It Black short program and their Adios free skate, and also really love Veppan Law and Digby's free skate also. So for me, those are some of the standout programs that we've seen so far in pairs this season. I'm going to move on to the men. And I think the winner here is definitely easy in Ilya Malinin. He comes in having won everything. He won at Lombardia, won Skate America, won Skate Canada the next week, and then just won Grand Prix Final. He hasn't won the free skate in 2 of his competitions. So at Skate America, he lost the free skate to Kevin Amos. And then at Grand Prix Final, even with the 7 quad attempts, he lost the free skate to Yuma Kageyama. So we haven't seen him at his best every single time that he's been out, but he has 2 solid programs, especially the short program I think is really strong, and everybody is chasing him. He seems to really relish the attention, and I think frankly he is very good for the sport, especially to those who are more casual fans that can sort of maybe really gravitate to his style. So he's definitely a big winner. Other winner I have is Andrew Torgashev of the U.S. The U.S. men have been, not named Ilya or Jason Brown, have been a real eyesore, honestly, for the last couple of seasons. It's just been like, does anybody want this 3rd spot? Nobody wants this 3rd spot. I was feeling very much the same way coming out of the Challenger season. And then Andrew Torgashev comes out and gets a bronze medal in his Grand Prix and then ends up with a last minute assignment to another one and ends up fourth there. So he has definitely emerged to me to get the third spot. Obviously, we've still got nationals to go and things can change, but he has been more impressive even than Jason Brown in this fall season. So he's a winner for me. And the other one I'm going to say is Shun Sato. Shun has definitely been backseat behind so many other Japanese men, has not been able to get to Worlds, even though he's done very well in the Grand Prix the last couple of years. This year, I think he's bringing some of the best skating skills that we have seen him of his career and a lot better consistency. Won his first Grand Prix in that last Grand Prix of the season at Finland, and then was able to get on the podium at Grand Prix final, which sets him up really nicely to potentially medal at Worlds. He's got the tech content to do it. Obviously, that's going to depend on how everyone else skates, whether or not Adam is healthy, but very pleased with what we have seen out of Shun Sato this season. He should finally be able to make it onto the world team. Rising star coming out of the men's this season is definitely Mikhail Shadorov. The last 2 seasons, he's had this Carmina Burana free skate that has just gone nowhere. There was very little, if any, real choreography in it, and then he repeated it 2 years in a row, which made it even more painful to watch. So this season, I wasn't really impressed in his first outing of the season, but he has made some attempts to improve some of the choreography. But then, of course, with this triple axel quad toe combo that he pulled out, this gotten a lot of attention on him. He's gotten a lot of fans. And also, like, his Kung Fu Panda exhibition program that he's been doing since the summer also has garnered him a lot of fans as well. So he is definitely a rising star, and it's been very exciting to see his improvements over this season as well. Losers for the men. First, Adam's ankle. Adam Seohimfa made the most amazing jump from 19th at Worlds to finishing on the podium last year. Comes into this season having endured an ankle injury over the summer, gets a little bit of a late start to the season, has a rough short program in France, but is able to pull himself up in the free skate with a lot of help from a lot of men who were trying to help him win that competition as well. Re-injures the ankle at his second Grand Prix and has to withdraw from what would have been a home Grand Prix final. Definitely sucks for Adam that we haven't seen him at his best this year. And hopefully the ankle can get there. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to get there this season or not, but his ankle is definitely one of the losers. The other one is Canadian men. You tell me one Canadian man that you have seen that you are excited about this season. I'm waiting. Anybody? Crickets, right? It's impossible. It has been abysmal. Like, I didn't think it would be worse than it was last year. And somehow it's worse than it was last year. Between Roman, Gogolev, I think Alexa Rakic was the highest scoring Canadian man at Skate Canada. It's just been rough to watch yet again. And we didn't see them a lot on the Grand Prix this season because they didn't have a lot of spots because they weren't in the top 24 to qualify. Oh, it's just been so painful. Okay. And then my other losers. American men, not named. Ilya Malinin or Andrew Torgashev. So unfortunately, even Jason Brown, they've all been so tough to watch. Jason Brown hasn't been tough to watch because his programs are lovely even when he's falling on his triple axels. But we've seen Lucas Broussard and Maxim Nuomov and Liam Kapekis, and it's all just been really, really rough. Thank goodness for Andrew Torgashev. Oh, and I didn't even talk about Camden, who is trying to work a full-time job and be a world-class figure skater, which has been going awful. So all the American men, just if you're not Ilya or you're not Andrew, I'll give a pass to Jason, but everyone else, just unfortunately, big losers this fall. And I'm also going to throw one out to Alexander Solevko, who miraculously gets a silver medal at last year's Europeans. At times last year during the Challenger circuit, you would sort of see flashes of brilliance. And this season, it's just been like a huge step back, like no momentum forward from any of that. It's just, it's been painful to watch. That Tango program was painful to watch. So he brought his last year's free skate back, which is easier to watch, but he's still not landing the jumps. Also, I'm sorry, big loser for me. All right, moving on to my wild cards. I've got, again, a few. First wild card is Junwan Cha, who has also been battling injury issues again this season, like last season. He started off this season once again trying to do 2 quads in the short program, didn't go well, did go back to the triplets, triple loop instead, much better, but has not been super consistent with the quads and the free skate. And unfortunately, with injury issues for him, when he comes back, when is that going to be? What's he going to look like? We don't know. He was very inconsistent in the fall last year because of the injury. Showed up at 4 continents and it looked like he was sort of back. And then at Worlds, it was like a step back again. So big question mark. Another one, Cal Mura. And I could probably do like I did Adam and say Cal Mura's hip because he re-injured his hip before Skate America, and it's been sort of really up and down for him. At times, he has just amazingly been able to pull it together, even after like just multiple falls, hard falls in practice, and went out at NHK and was brilliant in the short program and fell apart. In the free skate, didn't make Grand Prix final, which on one hand might help him recover from his injury a little bit better. I'm not sure. It didn't sound like to me like something that was going to get better. Like it needs like probably a long period of rest, which I don't think he's going to do between now and the Olympics. I'm not really sure, but big question mark for him because he has all the goods. Very rarely does he put them all together at the same competition, but if he does, he's world class. And then my other wild card is Kevin Amos. I'm not throwing him in the losers bracket because we did see 2 really good competitions out of Kevin this season, which we did last year too. And then Grand Prix final was a big step back. So I don't know what we're going to get from Kevin. Are we going to get good Kevin or bad Kevin when it comes to Europeans and Worlds? No idea. Big wild card. All right, before I move on to dance, some of my standout programs for the men, I really do like Elia's short program to running. I think it suits him really well. Love the footwork sequence he does. Love the ending pose. Also really love Yuma's short program, The Sound of Silence. I think it's really, really strong. And I also really love both of Cal's programs, his short program and his free skate to umbrellas of Cherbourg. Let's move on to dance. This is a discipline that has had just lots of chaos this season, but mostly because we just had a lot of falls this season. Chalk and Bates fell at Skate America, and then Piper Paul fell at Grand Prix final and at their second Grand Prix, and then Guinard and Fabry fell. It's just been kind of a weird season. So my winner for dance has to be Fear and Gibson. I mean, they were undefeated in the Grand Prix. Yes, there were big mistakes from the favorites, but they came in with 2 big wins. They, again, ended up with the medal at Grand Prix final for the first time of their careers. And they seem to be a team on the rise, even though I've remarked that their scores are not impressing anybody. They're not anywhere near what we've seen them get in the past, but their results are definitely more impressive than anything that they've done in the past. And they seem to be trending upward, and their consistency is helping them tremendously. And perhaps they get bit by the fall bug at Europeans, and it happens to them. But if they just continue to press and push and be consistent, then they're going to find themselves perhaps on a world's podium this season. Who knows? I'm also going to give a winner to Chalk and Bates. Yes, they fell at Skate America, but since then, they've really been lights out, and they look really strong. I think that this free dance especially is the best free dance that they've had in this Olympic quad. And I think that their finished free skate by the time they got there in the 22-23 season was a good vehicle for them. Last year's free skate was a good vehicle for them, but there's something about this year. It just really, really works. And you know they've got a home worlds coming up this season too. They just look unbeatable. So it was hard for me not to give them sort of one of the winner picks as well. I've got 2 teams for most improved. One is Smart and Deke because, my goodness, last year was very forgettable for me. Both of their programs were just kind of, especially that Elvis free skate. And at the beginning of this season, it was rough. And every single time that they have come out this season since that fateful Nebelhorn trophy, they have just looked better and better. I mean, who would have picked them to have gotten a medal at Skate America? I certainly would not have. They have scored just really fantastically with this Dune program. I think that they could absolutely be in the hunt for a medal at Europeans if they continue to skate this way. So for me, they definitely are most improved. And I also give out a most improved award to Caroline Green and Michael Parsons of the US. Their material last year sucked. They came out and started with like a Paula Abdul rhythm dance, which I thought was cute, but they felt like, I guess it was too same to the Janet Jackson they had just done. So they came out with the Scorpions one instead, which frankly I thought Nisette Markaloff did it better. And then the free skate just never worked. They didn't make the world team. It was just kind of a mess. There were lots of questions about were they going to change coaches or what was going on. And so a lot riding on them coming into this season. Both of their programs are good vehicles for them. Really think of the Austin Powers and these boots are made for walking works really well for their rhythm dance, but their free dance is really, really beautiful and has a chance to be really, really special. And so I was really excited to see that they look more like the team that we're used to seeing this season. So those two are definitely the most improved. Losers, once again, I've got a lot. So obviously Guinard and Fabry, who came out at the beginning of this season in Challengers looking really strong like they always do. And once the Grand Prix hit, things just really kind of fell apart for them. Big fall in France, losing that Grand Prix. They came out in China with new costumes, and it seemed like it made the program worse in a way. Their scores have continually gone down. They did, squeak out a silver medal at Grand Prix final, but barely about a point ahead of Farron Gibson, who I feel like could be European champions ahead of them a month from now if some things don't change. And so definitely not the direction that they want to be going. I also have to give out a loser to Piper and Paul. I hate to do it, but they've fallen at 2 out of their 3 outings this season, which does not help them. They lose a lot of momentum that way. Had a fall in both the rhythm dance and in the free dance. Just very, very unfortunate because I think they have 2 strong programs and they come in very motivated after losing at home last season and just have not been able to capitalize on that at all. I'm also, it feels kind of unfair, but I'm going to give a little bit of a loser also to Reed and Amber Levicius because last season they got bronze medals in both of their Grand Prix, bronze medalists at Europeans, and this season just couldn't get going fast enough and could not medal at their first Grand Prix. It did eke out a bronze at NHK, but they lost to Christina and Anthony, which is a team that they beat at Worlds last year. So they just seem to be going in the wrong direction, which is unfortunate because I really do like this free dance that they're doing this year with the puppet and the puppeteer. And I think it might come together a little bit later, but the question is it going to come together too late for them this season to really make an impact? And I'm also going to give a loser to Peyton Bai of the US, who had a great challenger season last year, couldn't really capitalize it on the Grand Prix. But this season, boy, it's just been rough to the point that they went back to their last year's free skate after a couple of outings with the Hungarian Rhapsody not really working for them. And they had a mistake, not a fall, but a mistake on a lift in their first Grand Prix. I think it was in France, and ended up 9th overall, not where they want to be. And so it's just been a tough, tough fall for them. And if I'm going to give like a rising stock award to somebody, it's definitely going to be Christina and Anthony getting on the podium twice for the first time in their careers. The gap between them and Green and Parsons, as well as any of the other teams that are vying for podium spots at U.S. Nationals, Brody and Somerville, Zingis and Kolesnik, that gap between where Christine and Anthony are at and everybody else is pretty far right now. And they've also either gained or passed some of the teams that were beating them last season internationally. So they look just really, really strong, and they continue to be trending in the right direction. So wild cards for dance, I've got Fear and Gibson as a wild card as well as a winner because they look to be a team on a mission this year. Either winning at Europeans or getting on the world's podium. One of those to me is going to happen. It's just a matter of if one of them happens or both of them happens. The other team that I have as a wild card is Reed and Amber Lovicious. I know I just gave them a loser slot, but I do think that they have the potential to improve these programs to get back in that conversation for a podium slot at Europeans if they can improve enough. And I think you could also throw the Tashlers in there, Turkula and Versluis in there as well, because we have seen all of those teams at different times this season skate really well. They just all lack consistency in those technical elements. At times they'll get level 4 twizzles and level 3 on their step sequences, and at times they'll get level 1s, and at times there's problems. And so the consistency with these teams is not always there, but if they are, then they can really contend for podium slots at Europeans. And then some of my favorite programs this season in dance, there's quite a lot to choose from, especially free dances. Don't know that there's hardly any rhythm dances that I liked. I basically said that the two Finnish teams, Turkula and Versluis and Orihara and Pirinen, are probably the only rhythm dances that I've really liked this season. I do also like Carrera and Ponomarenko's rhythm dance as well, but the ones that stand out to me the most, Turkula and Versluis, is Tango. Love it. I do, as I mentioned, like Reed and Amber Lovicious free dance. Also really like Green and Parsons free dance, as I mentioned before, and Zyngas and Kolesnik's free dance all stand out to me, along with Smart and Deke's Dune program. Lastly, let's talk about the women. And so this has been probably the most competitive discipline of all 4 disciplines. Winners, I think, have to be, of course, Amber Glenn, who went from winning 0 international events to winning 4 international events this season at Lombardia, both of her Grand Prix, and then Grand Prix final, scoring over 210 points at every single event that she's been in this season. Looks really good, and right now everybody's kind of chasing Amber. The other winner would be just really the Japanese women in general. There are 18 medals available and the Grand Prix this season, and they won 14 of them. So Amber won 2, Isabeau won 1, and Lorinaki Gutmann won 1. Everything else went to Japanese women. It went to a whole lot of Japanese women. There was Kaori Sakamoto, Rinko Watanabe, Wakaba Higuchi, Rion Sumiyoshi, Yuna Aoki, Mona Chiba, Hana Yoshida. Just so many Japanese women did so well, and just as a whole, they really get a winner. And then I'll give a special one to Mona Chiba because I think she definitely solidified herself with Kaori as one of the Japanese women to basically almost be guaranteed a world spot at this point. Biggest surprise, definitely Lorinaki Gutmann. Even at the Challenger circuit this season, it began, seemed to be like, here we go with the Italian women again. Nobody's really standing out. And then she comes out at NHK and skates pretty well, finished 6th there, which I think a top 6 finish for Lorinaki was great. And then she gets a short turnaround and ends up filling in for someone who had pulled out that was injured. And the next thing we know, Lorinaki Gutmann is on the podium at Finlandia Trophy and really was just a point away from winning the whole thing. And all of a sudden just kind of propels herself not only above the other Italian women, but puts into the conversation whole of Team Italy for a potential team medal at an Olympics a year from now if she can skate like that. I think hopefully it gave her a lot of confidence. She always has really unique programs, and so to put it together with the technical element was just such a huge, nice surprise. So she was the biggest surprise for me of the fall season. Biggest disappointment, again, this might seem a bit unfair, but honestly, for me, it was the American women in the Grand Prix, not named Amber. Obviously, it kind of started off with Isabeau at Skate America, and obviously she won the short program there. was really expected to win the event, coming in as world silver medalist, coming in with a big seeded spot. She was away from the Luna Hendricks of the world and the Kaori Sokomotos of the world, which has been an issue for her at the Grand Prix before. There was always somebody there who's basically better than her, and didn't have a great free skate there, ended up with bronze. And then, of course, she was injured. We presume, we've never actually heard, but we presume that that was the case as to why she withdrew from her second one. I'm not calling Isabeau a disappointment for being bronze. Don't misunderstand me. But it kind of started with that. And then I think for me, especially, I'm only going to talk for myself. There were a lot of high expectations sort of going into the season with the American ladies, with Alyssa coming back, with Brady coming back. And then with the Challenger season, you had Sarah Everhart doing very well. You had Elise Lynn Gracie doing very well. You had Alyssa winning at Budapest. And so there was a lot of talk coming into the season, even with Ava Marie Ziegler before she withdrew. Remember, Lindsay comes into this season having a silver medal at NHK last year. So you're expecting, I kind of felt like, for American ladies to get some medals at this Grand Prix. And outside of Isabeau's bronze and Amber's 2 golds, it just did not happen. They were close. They were close in several Grand Prix. Brady was close at Skate America. Alyssa was close, especially at Skate Canada. Sarah was very close. Unfortunately, Elise had a tough time with the pressure at Skate America, and then she had to go right back to back at Skate Canada. Lindsay really, really had a tough go in hers. So unfortunately for me, it's a little bit of a disappointment. I'm not calling them losers by any stretch of the imagination, but just a disappointment for me that they didn't do as well as they even did last season when we had Amber medal and Isabeau medal and Ava Marie medal and Lindsay medal, that we actually went backwards this season with all the talent that we had. Most improved for the women, Kimi Rapon. Kimi has had a lot of issues in the short program, especially falling, stepping out, turning out, you name it. It's been an issue. She's just not been able to skate cleanly in the short program up until this season. It's like she's finally got it figured out. So it's really nice to see her skate clean in the short program. She still doesn't have a lot of height on her jumps, and that's been an issue with her getting up into like the 70s. She's still just kind of hanging out there in that 66 kind of point range, but at least the consistency is there, and that's going to be a big help for her going forward. The other most improved is definitely Wakaba. Wakaba, of course, had an injury and was out in that first season after the Olympics, and then last season just wasn't quite ready yet, and it's been so nice to see her really be back at her best this season. Losers of the Grand Prix in the fall, the Korean women. I mean, just if you're not Chaeyeon Kim, it has been rough. Of course, it started with all of the drama with Youngyu and Hyein Lee right before the season started, and them having to withdraw from the Grand Prix. Yeon Kim was back, but her head definitely is not back, and it was really rough watching her in both of her Grand Prix. Min Chae Kim had a really rough Grand Prix. Only Asun Yoon looked anywhere near ready to be on anybody's world team. And then I'm also going to throw a loser to Nina Pinzaroni, who has beautiful programs and is a gorgeous skater to watch. But after last season, getting on the podium at both of her Grand Prix, making it to Grand Prix final, getting on the podium at Europeans, just was unable to get back onto the podium at either of her Grand Prix this season. A lot of rotation issues going on with her this season. And unfortunately, it's just been a big disappointment for her this season. Wild cards going into the second half of the season. Hyein Lee is back. She appealed her suspension. She was at the Korean ranking competition. She's been named to 4 continents. And so we will see her very soon, interestingly enough. So that's a big wild card because she is a world medalist. She was in the top 6 after the short program at Worlds last season. She was attempting triple axels at the Korean competition just a couple of weeks ago. She always has great artistry, beautiful programs, regardless of whatever you think of the whole behind the scenes drama with what has gone on there. She definitely is a wild card for the second half of the season. I'm also going to throw Isabel Levito in there because she's a world medalist. She's a national champion. She has won Grand Prix. She has medaled at Grand Prix final. She has all of the goods. We have no idea exactly what if it was illness, if it was an injury, whatever it is that she is dealing with. If she's still dealing with that, we don't know. Probably likely won't know until nationals because she's not the national champion. So she won't be in the pre-national press. That will be Amber. So it'll be some time unless Isabeau makes a post or does some kind of press, exactly kind of what's going on. So she definitely is going to be a wild card. And then also Luna Hendricks, who has been out of the entire fall season, who has one of the highest scoring potentials of ladies out there we haven't even seen so far this season. And so she's also a big wild card as well. She is the reigning European champion. All right, some of my top programs in women's this season. I mean, you could just throw so many different Japanese ladies in here. Both of Yuna Aoki's programs are fabulous. Rion Sumiyoshi, both of her programs I really enjoy. Both of Rino Matsuke's programs I really enjoy. Wakaba's free skate I also really love. Those are some of the programs that stand out to me so far this season. I think you could also throw Laura Naki-Gutman Squid Game in there. Also super interesting and different. Really enjoy that one as well. All right, so that is my wrap up of the fall season. So these are kind of the championships that I'll be covering on the podcast. So Canadian Nationals will be first. Amazingly, none of these competitions bump heads this year. Yay, hallelujah. Almost always either Canadian Nationals and US Nationals are at the same time, or Europeans is the same time as US Nationals. It's always something. Last year, 4 continents was just like, it was so many things jumbled up together. So everything's nice and spread out this year, which is great. So Canadian Nationals will be January 14th through the 19th. Then US Nationals is the following week, January 20th through the 26th. Europeans will be the following week after that, January 28th through February the 2nd. And then we'll have a couple week break before 4 continents in Korea. That'll be February 18th through the 23rd. So those are going to be all the nationals and ISU championships that I'll cover. I will do a preview for US Nationals before that. I'm undecided if I'm going to US Nationals or not. It's in Wichita, which the flight situation getting into Wichita, there's not as many choices to get there. And then I took an extra job, which I didn't need, but I did. And so now I work on Fridays. And so I haven't decided. I'm leaning towards not going and probably aiming towards just going to Boston for Worlds. But we'll see. I haven't completely decided exactly just yet. My last podcast of the year will be coming up in a couple weeks, and that will be my top 10 figure skating moments of 2024. So you can look for that. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast so you can get all of those in your feed. You can find me on all the socials at iSkate Podcast. You can send me a line at thecuttingedgepod@gmail.com. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And since this is my last podcast before the holidays, happy holidays. Merry Christmas to those of you that celebrate and all of the other things. I won't say Happy New Year yet because I will be back before then. All right, guys, take care.